Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for the second day of Building Transparency with Integrity Pacts in the EU. We see a great number of participants again. We hope that it is many of you are joining us from yesterday and that you are interested in knowing more about the tool. Also, newcomers are more than welcome, and we hope that you will catch up on some of the discussions that we have had already from the first day. And well, we're very happy here with the first session. We have excellent participants to share more on the nitty-gritty, the details of how to advocate, set up, and implement Integrity Pacts. I will introduce the participants we have. We have with us Stefan Appel from REGIO, who I'll give you the floor just in a short time. And we also have 3 colleagues from 3 out of the 15 organizations that were part of this pilot testing the tool of the Integrity Pact in EU-funded projects. I would say these 3 are also some of my favorite partners because of their experience, their work, their energy they bring to this project. And we have with us 3 executive directors. One, her name is Inese Taurina. She's executive director of TI Latvia. Another one is Karina Carvalho, the executive director from Transparency International in Portugal. And Giovanni Colombo, also the executive director from Transparency International chapter in Italy. So with no further preamble, Stefan, we welcome you to take the floor and give us a few words to kick off this day 1.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me, Rafael? Because I had quite some connection issues. Yeah, okay, very good. That's a good start. So welcome also from my side to the second day of the conference. I'm Stefan Appel. I'm the head of the unit which signed up to this pilot project together with Transparency International to introduce Integrity Pacts into cohesion policy. And so I'm very happy that there's quite a number of people joining also for this second day of our event. Yesterday we have heard a lot from many speakers about the need to uphold the core values of the EU, integrity and transparency. And let me pick out some quick points for those who might have forgotten or have not managed to participate yesterday, what was said yesterday. I think several speakers, including obviously the chair of Transparency International and the founder of TI, underlined what a powerful tool IPs can be to create collective action between the private sector, public administration, and civil society. So they are islands of integrity, as Peter Eigen called them. And our commissioner joined into this choir to say integrity and good governance are absolutely essential tools for cohesion policy. They are the core of our credibility. We are investing 420 billion euros this period, and we must make the best use of these exceptional funding levels, and citizens must trust that we deliver in a timely and effective way to deliver on the projects and the policies. So good governance and integrity, they are not optional extras, they are the foundation and precondition of success. So these were, I think, very important political, guidance and support for this. Public procurement is important. I think our director also underlined that 14% of EU GDP is deployed through public procurement, and nearly half of our structural cohesion funds is spent through procurement. So this IP project was launched to improve the way how these funds are invested and to use the levers of cooperation with citizens to improve the outcomes. So what did the participants highlight? What needs to be done? I think there was a lot of, speakers highlighted the efficient monitoring as an important condition, and that we need to have more innovative ways to monitor, not only the legal means, but also other means. And that in this context, civil monitoring is so important. And that all this is done to avoid 2 major risks, as participants highlighted: wasting money to errors and corruption on the one side, and wasting money as a consequence of wrong decisions. So that's why we need to get also the civil society element into it. And many people also wondered about the role of artificial intelligence. So I think the bottom line is greater technology brings opportunities, but requires even greater openness and transparency. So that was a bit about the why, but what about the how? Speakers underline that it's important to have good data which can be analyzed, and that indeed the role of civil society and civic monitoring is so important to ensure that the public funding is done the right way. And that is also what the Commission is trying to do right now, is that to have more citizen engagement in EU spending, and that the Integrity Pacts are a very important tool in our toolbox to achieve this. So what are the benefits and challenges of IPs? First of all, to reduce the risk of corruption, that's quite obvious, but also to get more countries on board to embrace a clean contracting. And that through these large projects, for example, which have more higher, let's say, public awareness, that we reduce the way projects are seen in terms of opaque or messy, etc. More transparency helps also more acceptance of what is actually done. And a very important other element was also that apart from these, let's say, more technical issues, it's a forum of social dialogue between the contracting authorities and citizens, which also helps to get more engagement by the citizens and more ownership. But it's also indeed not only about monitoring, it's also about how to do the right things right. So IPs are much more than an anti-corruption tool. They are an important element to make public spending more meaningful. And I think we should also acknowledge that many companies which are part of Integrity Pacts also acknowledge a lot of benefits for them, which at the first stage it may seem more cumbersome and more let's say more bureaucracy, but it also helps them for their own reputation, helps them their image. It helps them also for a more ethical management and a more, let's say, representative setting with all the different stakeholders. So I think there is something in for everybody, but let's not hide it. I think the discussions yesterday have also shown that many things can still be improved further. So there's still a lack of, let's say, overall awareness, which needs to be increased, as well as wider public publicity. The neutrality and independence of the monitors is an issue, is a challenge, which has to be addressed in the setup, as well as also the issue of workload, resources, and capacity of those monitors, and how to ensure that they indeed can cope with what is expected from them. And the last but not least is obviously the political will. I think that was underlined by several. You need to have the political will. So what today's seminar is about, how do we keep the momentum beyond this pilot project which we have been conducting? So how to keep the momentum in the member states. We in the Commission try to encourage member states to implement IPs in their programs and projects now in the new period, as we call it, the next 7-year period, 2021 to 2027. We are willing to provide assistance and support through our training, to communities of practitioners, exchange of good practices like today's meeting, and the help of our peer-to-peer instrument. And last but not least, through the new Integrity Pact toolbox that will also be introduced today. So, but what do we want to do today is to hear from you, how can we keep up the momentum to implement Integrity Pacts? So I hope this will be a fruitful and constructive and interesting exchange between you and us and Transparency International on all the good practices. And I hope it will be a very productive and helpful for all of you. So thank you very much. I stop here and hand back over to Rafael.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for these words, this great introduction, summary of what we discussed yesterday, the why you pointed out well. And now let's get in more into the details. We're going to reflect during this session more on what has happened, what have we learned from this pilot that has lasted 6 years in total. And for that, we have prepared just a short presentation to discuss like what are some of the main learnings. And after it, we're going to go with Inese, Karina, and Giovanni to hear directly from them some of their learnings in three key aspects. The first one, how do we secure political buy-in to implement this tool? The second one, how do we come up with a very robust monitoring in order to have a strong Integrity Pact? And third, how to conduct effective monitoring of a public contracting project. So if you could put the presentation on the screen, we start. This is, of course, an overview and a summary of what we have observed. And we started this analysis probably approximately 2 years ago, a little bit more than that, when we found out that when we realized that we were coming closer to the end of the project, trying to answer the question, can Integrity Pacts drive change? So I know that probably we have heard it so much already during this yesterday and today, but I think it's important to see the specific definition of the Integrity Pact to remind what are its components. I mean, first and foremost, we have to, Integrity Pact is a mechanism that allows collaboration between a public entity or a group of them and civil society to ensure that authorities and bidders act within constraints set out by law, address corruption risks, and foster trust in a public contracting project. In these components, I think first and foremost, we have to recognize that the main purpose, or the one that allows the IP to start, is that we have to make sure that participants are acting within the constraints set out by the law. And by the law, we do not only refer to public contracting regulation. It can also cover anti-corruption and fraud policies, competition laws, or even environmental rules, among others. But it's about upholding, in the end, the rule of law when it comes to the way that we plan, award, and execute a public contract. A second component that is also in connection to the first one is address corruption risks. And I think this is a very important element to understand from the Integrity Pact, that it's the emphasis it places on prevention. While it can uncover corruption, which is something that probably Inese will tell us later, it's something that they saw on their IP or some suspicion of corruption, I would say that one of the main assets of the Integrity Pact is that it has a preventive objective. The main goal is to get rid or to close those spaces for corruption before they can occur. And then third, by doing these two actions, ultimately we seek to foster trust in a public contracting project. We aim to bridge the project closer to citizens, especially to the communities and the beneficiaries or the communities that will benefit from this project. And Integrity Pact does that by two broad components. I mean, we have heard that one component, and I think it's even in its name, we have some reference, a pact or a public agreement, where the parties involved commit to refrain from any corrupt behavior, enhance transparency and accountability. And second of all, the independent mechanism that is led by civil society to monitor compliance with the applicable regulation and the agreement itself and inform the public about it. In this regard, next please, we have these two components that I have already mentioned. The public agreement has to be strong. It must have provisions that are aiming to expand transparency and accountability, ideally not only meet what is already in the law, but also to try to other measures, proactive measures that can increase the amount of information that is available to citizens or the spaces where they can participate. And second, the independent monitoring mechanism, that it always has to be led by a civil society organization, and that is probably the element that makes it more powerful. A pact or an agreement alone, it cannot drive change, but I think it's like the combination of the commitment that the parties make in line with the independent mechanism that creates or that gives a lot of strength to the tool. And within the independent mechanism, a very important aspect, of course, is to inform the public about it. It is not only about having one civil society group and one authority just discussing the two of them, but it's also about keeping the public, the citizens informed about it, because that is at the core of the tool. So let's go back to the question that we started, like, can Integrity Pacts drive change? Well, I think the answer, of course, is yes, but yes, if. And this if actually is something that comes from the learnings and the lessons of the pilot. We have 5 specific if or conditions that we believe are critical for the success of an Integrity Pact, and that will give us some hints to the conversation that we'll have just after this presentation. The first one is that projects have to be selected based on a strategy. And what does it mean? It means that the project must have some value, and not only is about the economic value. Of course, sometimes projects that have a higher cost are more relevant for our communities, of course, because of all the amount of resources, public taxpayers' money that we are putting on them. But also we have to consider other measures, such as the risks that could be linked to this market or to this project. Maybe there has been some suspicion of corruption in the past. Maybe we know that the behavior of some companies is being contrary to competition or to some of the regulation in this market. And also, we could also have projects that are probably of a smaller value, but that can be significant to the communities in our countries. For example, building a hospital or extending services, health services in a community where we have elderly population increasing, or we could have a project where increasing access to internet is important in order to drive progress in the area. I mean, also that kind of value is important to take into account when selecting a project that is suitable for an Integrity Pact. Second, a robust monitoring must be in place. And of course, this touches on many different variables. One thing is to start with a very strong agreement, and we will discuss in a bit how can we make that, what are some strategic or critical provisions to have in an agreement. But it also refers to the funds that we put on this mechanism, making sure that the civil society group that will be leading the monitoring mechanism will have access to enough resources to have experts to go to the field when it's necessary, to have expertise to analyze specialized documents, resources to reach out to the communities. Of course, there are many more, and we'll discuss them with you. But another aspect that is also very relevant and that we found that was probably it has a very direct effect on the success and quality of an Integrity Pact is that data and information has to be accessed timely. So data and information is probably the fundamental input of an Integrity Pact. The information that authorities are going to be proactively disclosing at some point, also companies at another stages, and that the monitor may access that one at a time where it's relevant to be analyzed and to have some observations, feedback, comments that can actually help improve the contracting procedure. In line with the previous one, we have noticed that when engagement is regular and sustained, when the monitor and the authorities and the bidders are engaged actively in a conversation, when they're exchanging information, when they are meeting, that is also another factor that is critical for the success of an Integrity Pact. And finally, the fifth aspect on it's also that the Integrity Pacts ideally has to be part of a broader advocacy strategy. Having a one-off of an Integrity Pact, just one here and there, of course, it may benefit and it may protect one specific project. But in the end, what we're trying to drive, or the change that we want to drive with Integrity Pacts, is to make public contracting system works. So when we implement an Integrity Pact, it's also an opportunity to look what is not working, what probably some laws have some shortcomings when it comes to transparency, to accountability, and that's something that monitors can document and put out there in order to improve our public contracting systems. So ideally, the Integrity Pacts that drive change are also those that are seen as part of broader efforts to improve how governments plan, award, and implement contracts. So with no further preamble, and after this short presentation, let's jump let's go back to the room, and let's hear from Inese, from Karina, from Giovanni, about the direct experience implementing Integrity Pacts. And we'll start with the first question, or the first section, the main question that we have, that is how to secure political buy-in, which I think probably is a very challenging aspect that we have all faced. I mean, even after the pilot, is something that I think is still like a struggle, no, to bring more authorities into this conversation, to let them know what's the value of the tool, and in the end saying, yes, let's go ahead with this tool. So I'm going to start with you, Karina, if you don't mind, because I would like to ask you about the work that you were leading, because I think you have very good successes when it comes to advocacy, also to your monitoring, of course, but on advocacy, something where Portugal stands out. You have secure or you have embedded Integrity Pacts in the latest national anti-corruption plan of the country, and it's also part of the country's most recent action plan in the Open Government Partnership. The government then is committed to have more of these tools to enhance transparency and accountability, to bring more citizens into public contracting. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about how you made this happen. If there were political developments that helped you make the case for Integrity Pact, how did you approach the authorities? So please feel free to give us as much details as necessary and inspire us to know how do we do good advocacy around Integrity Pacts.
Thank you, Rafael. Thanks to everyone that is listening to us and seeing us today, and for the opportunity to share our lessons learned here in Portugal. I will start by stressing, I think that's important to say, that we were the ones, TI Portugal, we were the ones proposing a national anti-corruption strategy back in 2019. We launched an online petition that was signed by more than 8,000 people. And so this was the kickoff for the discussions for the need of a national anti-corruption strategy. Fortunately for us, the government embraced this idea and proposed its anti-corruption strategy in September 2020. The problem was that by the time the government was proposing the national anti-corruption strategy, the government was also a little bit paradoxically regarding public procurement, because at the same time there were being proposed changes to the parliament for changing the public procurement code, and those changes were aimed to speed up the implementation of the recovery plan. And so for us it was a bit confusing. So in one end there was a national anti-corruption strategy being discussed by all public decision makers and public consultation as well, and on the other end there were being proposed changes to public procurement code that would increase significantly the risks of fraud and corruption in the use of public funds. And so for us, this had to do, in our view at least, with the emergency procurement provisions that were in place to fight COVID-19. There was this notion that was raising in public view and in most public institutions that public procurement was a bureaucratic burden, and it was also more like an obstacle to the use of funds that were needed to fight the pandemic. And from this point until the idea that public procurement would also constitute an obstacle to speed up the use of the funds got from the EU for the recovery plan was just a step. And so we were extremely vocal against this decision, this proposal to change the public procurement code. And fortunately for us, other key stakeholders, such as the Court of Accounts, join our recommendation, saying, look, we know that it's important to secure the use of EU funds for the recovery process, but we cannot dismiss all the fundamentals of public procurement, you know, transparency, integrity, fair competition, and all of this. And that's why we started a campaign, public procurement portal regarding emergency procurement, you know, highlighting the risks. Our plan was not to focus specifically on emergency procurement, but to use emergency procurement, like if we don't have a limit to what we would do to speed up the use of funds, we will completely disregard, you know, all the fundamentals of the public procurement code and all the regulations coming from the EU. So this also gave us an opportunity to showcase IP lessons learned, namely the ones related to capacity building for the CAs. So was the problem in the regulation, or was the problem in lack of capacity for contracting authorities to, you know, speed up the procedures or to able to manage the funds as quickly as the needs were in place? So I think that also gave us an opportunity to start discussing the role of citizens and civic participation towards value for money public spending and clean contracting. We did this through knowledge sharing and capacity building. So we start, you know, disclosing information about the project more vocally, and also we specifically aiming journalists. So right now we are the go-to civil society organization when a journalist asks questions about, you know, procedures, something that is happening in public procurement, and this gave us a space to actually start highlighting the flaws of the framework in place. And we participated, of course, in the public consultation process for the National Anti-Corruption Strategy, and fortunately for us, the government decided to include Integrity Pacts and other civic monitoring tools to the National Anti-Corruption Strategy. The problem is that for us, you know, a letter in a page is not enough. We need concrete actions. That's why we thought also a very good idea to ask our colleagues from the multi-stakeholder forum from the OGP in Portugal to include a new commitment, a more robust commitment into the national OGP National Action Plan, because that will give us an opportunity to lead the way in some of the decisions that are being taken regarding the recovery plan. For example, the Portuguese government launched a new transparency portal. This was decided together with the European Commission. What we're saying is that people and citizens need to look to the data that is in the procurement portal or the transparency portal and start discussing the options. Because like I said yesterday, it's key for citizens to trust in public spending, but at the same time, it's important that we are together engaged in the recovery process. And for that, we need people to look into the data, people concerned about integrity standards and transparency standards in public procurement. And I think, to be honest, that both the inclusion of the IPs in the National Anti-Corruption Strategy and other civic monitoring tools, but we're discussing IPs specifically, into the national OGP National Action Plan, and the fact that we are also part of a new think tank that was created by the Public Prosecutor's Office to discuss the new anti-fraud strategy for the use of EU funds, that will give us an opportunity to reinforce, I think, transparency and accountability standards into the procurement framework in Portugal. Of course, this won't happen. This didn't happen by chance. I must say that for us, for TI Portugal, the fact that we work since 2016, and for myself in particular, in the IP project, it also increased our capacity, internal capacity, in terms of better understanding what's public procurement, what's at stake, and what we can do to improve the standards. So I think we need really to start discussing also how to construct capacity building for civil society organizations, because we are not the only ones working on IPs. The future can be, takeover by other organizations aside TI's movement. But it's really important to understand that, and I think Sergey discussed that yesterday, anti-corruption literacy is also key to have a very good IP framework in place. Thank you so much.
No, well, thank you, Karina, for this very comprehensive answer. And I think it's, I hope many more of our participants will find it inspiring as I did, because I think what you show is like, it's a constant task, like you probably knocked on so many doors, probably some open, some didn't, but you continue, and then you were putting like the different pieces together. Like also, like the wave that was coming, you will also, I would say, surfing it. Like if it was the National Anti-Corruption Plan, doing the petition, then it came the pandemic, then it came the attempt of the Congress to change the law, and then you were taking on each opportunity that you had, stressing the importance to enhance transparency and accountability in this field, and putting IPs there as a tool. And I think another aspect that is probably very good, because that you touch on it, because we have a question from the participants from Harald's, which said like, how do we start with IPs when we know that there's weak capacity? And I think you were talking that just right at the end. We also need to invest on improving the capacity of civil society to understand better public contracting. You had the opportunity through the IP pilot, and you were improving and enhancing your capacity since the moment you started with the process. I mean, even before, you had already been involved in public contracting as a chapter, but it was growing during the process. And of course, I believe the resources that you had available allow you also to even expand more your capacity. So maybe we'll come back to this question also to hear more of your ideas, save it for later, your answers. But now let me ask Inese. Inese, I mean, Karina put us this example of like long work, like knocking on many doors, which I think is also something that GIA Latvia has done. But I know there is one very good example of also unexpected situations that they can become opportunities for enhancing oversight, for making the case. So, and you have a great example, because if I'm not mistaken, GIA Latvia collaborated with the Ministry of Defense of the country, implementing an Integrity Pact during the pandemic. And it was something that emerged quickly, and you really seized that opportunity. So what could you tell us more about this experience? How did it happen? How it was that you managed to set up an IP to get the political buy-in under these circumstances and so quickly?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And indeed, this was an unexpected situation due to COVID pandemic, of course. 2 years ago, mid-March, we came into this emergency situation in Latvia. And after approximately 1 month, so already we started this monitoring of centralized public procurement in cooperation with the Ministry of Defense. I was not the person actually at that time in communication with the ministry, so I couldn't really answer to the detailed questions like what was the talks and agreement at the end in this cooperation. But what are our lessons learned? And I think this is also a good example what Karina thought about this internal capacity, that we have to build this internal capacity and use any opportunity to do that. And yes, our cooperation along for a couple of months till mid-June, and we participated in meetings in this working group of Ministry of Defense, and also in this special procurement commission under the ministry. And also this is like a lesson learned that also in Integrity Pacts as such, we have this recommendation that it's very important that the civil organization starts the monitoring process from the very beginning. And this was a little bit our problem in this cooperation, that we started we joined the procurement monitoring when this already has started, and therefore we monitored we monitored 10 processes, but out of that only 6 from the beginning. And we see that it's also very important to, at the very beginning, set up like clear cooperation principles, meaning that, as you told also before, data available on time and available as such, because also due to this emergency situation, we had a problem actually to access documents, and we had because we had to go to the premises of the ministry or the special procurement commission to actually look at the documents. And we have this feeling that that we were not included in all the email conversations between the members of committees or commissions. And this is also therefore very important that we start the monitoring process from the very beginning. And of course, our main aim of this joining this procurement process was to monitor that and observe that principles of good governance and regulations are there. And overall, our conclusion was that yes, we couldn't see any problems with overall with this process. So. And yes, about quickly like joining unexpected situation, it's also one more conclusion and important thing we have to take into consideration, that funding. Who funds our work? We spent around, if I'm not mistaken, 160 hours, so 1 month, one person. It cost us a lot, but we had no funding for that. So we did it pro bono based on our own resources, actually donations from our members, private members. So this is also a very important question to take into account, that yes, we are ready to build our capacity in joining and responding institutions and going in such opportunities, but on the other hand, it's very important to understand your own resources. Is it possible? And actually, maybe one more sentence. Yes, right now we are participating in a very time-consuming process in Latvia in selecting councils for universities, state universities, 12 committees, and long hours there, but very great, of course, internal capacity building opportunity, experience, and also what's important and what's important also, like a lesson learned from this previous example, that it's very important that the state institution, Ministry of Defense, or in our case with university, Ministry of Education, that they understand that NGO or civil society is not involved only like from the first meeting till the last meeting, but it's also very important to collect the feedback about good governance, integrity, transparency, etc., from experts, civil society experts, NGO experts, and then implement and do their own homework in working with that. So that's these are my comments, and if you, of course, have some questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Inese. And I think that you make great remarks on the challenges that you faced. Yes, you implemented this Integrity Pact in a very critical moment when all governments were fighting to get public protective equipment, protective equipment for the pandemic. You really see the opportunity. I mean, you had to put up your own resources, which is, I would say, quite remarkable during this time. But as you said, we really need to keep going, making this more systematic and making sure that it happens on a regular basis, that citizens can be part of public contracting, not only once or there, but that you can have definitely more resources to do this on a regular basis. So now I'm going to Giovanni, because I think Giovanni is also working on something that also gives us very good hints on how to get political buy-in, and it's also looking to the future, to anticipate where the investments might be going, where the money is flowing, and also what are the challenges that we might face there. So, Giovanni, I know that you have been in conversations with authorities in Italy, if I'm not mistaken, Lombardy and Milan, because there are interesting investments coming there, no, in the region, and you already also have experience implementing the pilots or one of the pilots with the Lombardy region government, and you have also another one in Italy, and that I believe gives you also tons of experience or examples to share. So I don't know if you can tell us a little bit more of what is happening there with you in Italy and how you're looking to the future to identify opportunities or the projects that could benefit from Integrity Pacts.
Yes, thanks, Rafael. Thanks for the invite. Before to speak about the future, I must speak a little bit about the past. In the past, we having good political endorsement about the start of these pilots, because in Italy is important to say this fact, are spread from 2003 in a simple version that is only a declaration of integrity to be included in the technical documents before starting in the for the bidder. So are well known in Italy, and we started with was enough easy because are well known. And the key actor was and is for the future the responsible of transparency and anti-corruption of the managing authority. For example, Lombardy region or Sardinia region is the key actors for arrive to the policy makers, policy decisions, and for to have a talk, a meeting, or interview for to show the advantage, potential, expected results, and the contribution that Integrity Pacts can take. All the Integrity Pacts that we call in jargon word 1.0 is only a declaration of correct behaviors. Instead, the experience of pilots of Integrity Pacts with DG Region are more complex across all phases, from need assessment to bid, pre-bid, bid, post-bid, and execution phase. So is a very, very new tool for Italy. No one outside these pilots and this kind of events know this new tool, and we are proposing across the responsible of transparency or official that or a director of area that was involved in this job, this experience. Now we are talking with Lombardy region. We want to talk with Lombardy region. We talked with Sardinia region, but for us, other two important and potential bidders are the municipality of Milan, because in Milan started the first version about what I talked before. And so on this simple version, for example, in December 2020, municipality of Milan added some values about a section on whistleblowing, on a conflict of interest, on the defense of rights and work for participation and so on. So, municipality of Milan is interested to other evolution of Integrity Pacts. And the last but not the least, we hope to start to break the ice from pilots to real procurement world. For example, with European project, but we tried also with the Olympic Games of Milano and Cortina 2026 that should be a great chance for to take knowledge about this tool. So in the past was about simple. Now we try to make escalation of involvement with these 4 potential partners for new integrity packs that we call in jargon word 2.0, with the monitoring, with the people engagement, and so on. We are trying to promote with this partner, 4 partners, the chance to bring from pilots to real world with some issues that we must to fight, to consider it, for example, the foundation, the funds, and so on. But this is should be a issues for a next question. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Giovanni, for telling us how you are driving these conversations, this whole journey of the talks with the authorities. I mean, we really hope that this can concrete into, or this gets to a more concrete proposal, because we have heard, of course, from previous cities that have had Olympic Games that there can be a lot of challenges when they have to build new infrastructure, that there are many risks. I mean, we know of that, so I think it would be good, or it would be exceptional that the government of Milan and Lombardy consider this option. And as you said, if they were the first one to try the tool many years ago and to move it forward, it would be great, of course, for that to take them to the next level. So now let's go to the second part of this discussion, that it's how to prepare a robust monitoring or a robust IP setting. And for that, I will invite also Karina for you to start this time too, because one of the aspects that I think is interesting about the Portuguese experience in this project is that you started collaborating with the contracting authority of the project you monitored, the renovation of the monastery in Alcobaça. And you started collaborating even before you had an IP. There, you were having, I think, conversations, and you were even supporting them somehow during the process of getting the EU funds. So I don't know if you can tell us how was this process, and if it was helpful or relevant to start the collaboration since that stage, even before the IP.
Thank you. We were one approach back in 2015. They were participating in IP 1. It was a call for manifestation of interest from contractors of Inese willing to participate in the project. And so first memorandum of understanding signed in the 2 organizations was back in 2015. Then one in 2017 with the IP phase 2. And I think it was
now,
very
I believe
important
that we're losing you a bit. Know if can you try again?
Can you listen to me right now?
No. Let's. Why don't you double check if something is interfering with your internet connection? And in the meantime, I will go with Giovanni, because I also have questions for all of you. But now, Giovanni, I know that one of the projects you have is the construction of a tram line, if I'm not mistaken, in the south of Italy. In Sardinia. And
Sardinia.
I was wondering, I mean, we know that you have a very good collaboration with the contracting authority that is responsible for this project, that they have become very good allies of your work, or like they're proud or happy to have been working with you in Integrity Pact. So how did you achieve this? How is it that you build very robust collaboration, that you have been in contact with them despite the distance, and that you have monitored this project and provided feedback and recommendations for its improvement.
Yes, it was and is a very good partnership because based on the trust at the beginning, and when we speaking about political rules, we made a protocol of collaboration with the Sardinia region before starting in the Integrity Pacts. So ERST, that is the agency of the transport of Sardinia region, having already good collaboration, good feeling with us. But during the project, we had a timely exchange of data and participation in key moments. For example, opening offers, sharing tenders elements. We went in Cagliari, and so we build a good relationship, and ERST appreciated advice and our recommendation. For example, to improve integrity safeguard. For example, with the intervention on code of ethics, whistleblowing system, training on anti-corruption, and so on, improving integrity tools. But overall, some recommendation was a good chance for there and for us for collaboration. For example, we saw that contract authority pay much attention to the quality of the work with the contractor, but not to the time factor. And we brought them that delay issues is very important issues. The delays generate other delays, rise cost, deteriorate relationship, and so this part of collaboration was very, very important. As was very important, other kind of recommendation and collaboration about communication, because the contract authority usual in all Italy wants to work well, but don't think to communicate what are making well with involve of citizen or civil society, public opinion. For example, on the issues of delays, was very complex factors that involved the municipality of the city, conference of services, contractors, and with us, with the event to explain to citizens the status quo of implementation and reasons of delays was an important chance for to take transparency and also to take responsibility for all actors involved, because usually delays is are having much reasons and much actors. And the last thing that we saw, for example, not only in Cagliari, but in all Italy, contract authority having about the communication issues, having a section on website for the bidder, for the tender, for the participation, the tender, who win, who the contractor. But stop here. The future phases with implementation, times, costs, no one speak about this part that is very important. So we bring them the awareness to communicate and to make people engagement, also through cultural initiative about the railway, historical railway, photos, and cultural event, allow to people to arrive to the procurement, to arrive to the project, and to raising a passion about the jobs and also about integrity issues. So all these kind of jobs take to us, to Sardinia region, we hope good collaboration and good results for the work, for the citizen engagement, and so on.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. And I think these different examples that you have provided, and the reason why I wanted to ask you is because the way you have approached to the contracting authority in Sardinia and in this project, it shows that the monitors here, they're not to observe the authority to fail, but you are there to help. What we want is that the authority, the public contracting system works, and it's more about making sure that there's that contribution, pointing out where the risk might be. I mean, sometimes there are delays, and it's about, okay, how do you correct this? How do you communicate this to the public? So I think that's something that I think is very valuable from your experience, and I thank you for sharing that. So now, question to the three of you. What advice would you have to someone that asks you how to have a robust IP in place? Where would you say is the priority? What are some of the key aspects when you were negotiating the IP that you think, like, if I would go back, I would put more emphasis here? Any volunteer? Inese, please.
Yes, we have our lessons learned from our experience, and put it in short, of course, as you are aware, we couldn't go through the whole monitoring process because the procurement process was terminated, but our lessons learned is more from this communication side, not the procurement monitoring as such. Three advices for someone to do that. So it's very important that we have clear information materials in any formats for general public to understand everything. The Integrity Pacts as such, our role, for example, TI Latvia role in the process, etc., that we are not the ones who are supporting but who is monitoring if everything goes according to the good governance standards. Then the second one, it's important to really in advance engage with media, so the journalists are aware and understand our role in the process, in the monitoring of the procurement, not beyond. Okay, I won't go in those details about accusations we got. And the third one, it's very important also to map the risks related to the attacks from opponents of the project, because of course for the project itself we had opponents because the tram line went through the historical cemetery, and of course it was really very it took very much energy from us to deal with that and to work on this information and media as well. So these are three advices: information to general public, engagement of media, and risks about possible attacks from opponents. Thanks.
Thank you, Inese. Very good points. I'm wondering, Karina, if you would like to go next to tell us about the collaboration and how it started. I try again. Can you try? We're listening to you, Karina. Or I have an idea. What if you turn your camera and we hear you, and I think that could also work, and we could hear about your experience on how did you start collaborating with the authority at a very early stage, and then it would also be great to listen about your main advice for a robust IP. You can hear us, Karina? Giovanni, may I ask you to tell us
Yes.
your main advice for how to have a robust IP?
Yes, in our case, the advice is having a strong and a clear section. In our case, the first two sections are a strong declaration, purpose of prevention and repression of corruption, fraud, and incorrect behaviors. And then spread of a culture of integrity and involvement of civil society. And the first point, obligation of reporting for incorrect behaviors intercepted by all signature of the PACts, contract authority and competitors, and then subcontractors after the contract, the winner phases. And very, very important, the sharing of all documents with the staff monitoring, with SharePoint or email, or but timely and comprehensive of all documents. And it's important also to define the chance of participation in the main stages of the tender. For example, with the monitoring staff, for example, opening offers, tenders non-directly, but the minutes and the reports about the commission of the tenders. And the two strong points are the expulsion from the tender in the case of violation of Integrity Pacts, and the payment of a penalty, in our case, of 2% of the contract amount is a strong deterrent. And the last but not the least, the signing of Integrity Pacts is mandatory by the competitors to participate to the tender. You must subscribe this document if you want to participate in the tender. With the law in the 2012, the law 119, the law provided that contract authority can insert this case to participate to the tender. So in Italy, the contract authority can ask as mandatory this commitment. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And I think there are like very excellent and interesting points here to explore. Inese, I really take the fact that information even has to flow even before the IP has started, because you need to understand better what the project is about, where the risks are going to be, like you pointed out, and that is of course critical to test, I think, the collaboration with the authority to see if the authorities are really willing to bring civil society organization into the whole process, and then plan an IP that will have the necessary means and resources to achieve its mission. And then I think, Giovanni, from your experience, I think I would highlight that you're actually going a little bit more than what it's already like into the Italian law. You are finding spaces where governments and authorities can prove their willingness to be open and accountable with very simple measures. Like you said, let's set a very specific channel for reporting, for whistleblowing. like you said, like very clear commitments to be in a specific moments of the contracting projects, to show all documents or information to the monitoring team, and even like the challenge of the penalties, which I think is something that might be a topic of further discussion, because that may deter, that may bring some authorities into the table, maybe not. But of course, I think it's one of the interesting topics that happens around the IP, and that proves that also the tool can be flexible. It can adapt to the different contexts and what's happening in different countries. So let's try, Karina, to see if we have you back and if we can hear from you on these matters.
Thanks, Rafa. I'm sorry to you all, but Vodafone was hacked this week in Portugal, and it seems someone is hacking our event as well, or at least my home today. I didn't hear your question, but I stopped when you asked about how to prepare a robust IP. I don't know if I should evaluate a bit more on that, or if you want to jump
exactly on that. If you can tell us, I mean, about your experience and how was it that, like, did it help to start working earlier with the contracting authority? And then if you can tell us your advice on how to set up a robust IP. What would you do if you go back in time in order to even make stronger the IP that you had in place?
To be honest, I must confess that I think I told that already. We were very lucky with the CA that work with us here in Portugal. As I was mentioning, they were the ones approaching TI Portugal for piloting the project. So our work with the General Director of Cultural Heritage initiated very early, back in 2015. But I think this has to do with leadership. I think it's really important to have good leadership. And we had the Deputy Director of CA, Mr. Felipe Silva, who was very enthusiastic about the project. And they were also launching the new audit team in the CA. So participating in the IP was pretty much aligned with everything they were, doing internally. And I think that was very, very important. Also, the stability of the teams during the whole implementation of the project. I'm here since 2016, as most of my colleagues and most of the members of the expert committee as well. And I think that was very good for project implementation. Another thing that I think it's also important to highlight, and I understand that this may be debatable, but I think it's really important to work since the needs assessment stage. I think that's key, because working with the CA from needs assessment, it allows us to understand the CA baseline for investments. So what were their goals? What were they aiming for? Why the EU funds were so key for the contracting authority? We must remember that the cultural sector in Portugal doesn't receive many funds from the annual budget, so having access to EU funding, it's key for the renovation and conservation of monuments, monasteries, such as the one at the Alcobaça that we pilot the project. It also increased the trust between the two organizations. I think it's really important. We work as partners from scratch since the beginning. And it also helped to prepare the monitoring plan. Because although we have, a framework for IP implementation, each project has its certain needs. So it's also important to somehow tailor the monitoring plan to the very specific project. For risk mapping, for example, the project implementation, what were the risks that we foresee to face in the future, but also to prepare the procurement risk specific for that kind of project. It's a project on cultural heritage, which is very specific. For example, we don't have many bidders in Portugal, or many companies in Portugal able to work on cultural heritage, and this poses, of course, a risk in terms of competition and integrity standards, and also in transparency. And another thing that I think is really important, and we also discussed this today, is to have a skilled independent monitor. I know that it's not all civil society organizations that are prepared to work on public procurement or to work on integrity. So it needs to be a strong commitment on integrity. And it's also, I think, a good point to work with an anti-corruption watchdog. because that reinforces the scale of the project. It gives the sense of independency of the independent monitor. It's clear if we are very vocal against anti-corruption, very vocal for integrity standards. It's also important for us to have good outreach and work very well with affected communities and with the general public. I can give you an example. Here in Portugal, for example, we have more than 45,000 followers on Facebook, so it's easy for us to address the public. And like I said, to have stable teams. And I think these are the key elements that work very well for us in Portugal. You know, the trust with the contracting authority, the collaboration at all times, working as partners. And I think that was really important for us to grow as a civil society organization working on public procurement, but for the CA as well, to improve their standards in a general manner. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Karina. I think you come to add even more interesting or relevant factors for planning a robust IP, securing that it is the top leadership in a CA that is also involved in the conversation, in the planning. I like very much that you point out that also there has to be a skilled independent monitor, but at the same time that organizations can partner, which was actually like the case in Romania, where two organizations came together to implement three IPs, and they each brought their own skills and expertise, some in communication, some on citizens participation, some more specialized on anti-corruption and public contracting. And that, I mean, it's not that the independent monitor is just one organization. It can also be sometimes a collection of organizations with very well-defined tasks and skills. And I mean, I also love that you bring the monitoring plan, which actually echoes also what Inese was mentioning on how do you anticipate some of the challenges, and of course there also the information, the trust, the partnership with the CA is essential from the very beginning. So, I mean, we're getting close to the last part of our session. And I mean, there's so much to cover. I see so many good questions in the chat, and we'll touch on them. But let me just go into the next one, which is how to conduct effective monitoring. And in this one, I would like to ask Inese about their experience, because the IP in Latvia actually ended up linked to a corruption investigation. And you were also involved, you collaborated with the authorities, and part of your monitoring influenced somehow this decision to stop the project because there were not enough conditions for integrity. So how did you manage this process? How was it, particularly with the CA, because the CA is the one that ended up being stopped with the project and an investigation started? And also, how was your collaboration with other authorities that ended up being linked to this investigation and the project?
Yes, thanks for this question. Indeed, our experience in this Integrity Pact was tough. Of course, I have to say that I think, like looking back in time, we can say that yes, our cooperation, let's say, with contracting agency REGIO and traffic was tense, and I will like briefly give you the fact. We monitored, of course, the process of procurements and for example, first procurement for the development of the construction project of the tram line. My colleagues identified a number of technical requirements in the standard documents, which appeared to significantly restrict the number of bidders. And this is like the question which repeats in every procurement which that there are like in documents you can see that the requirements restrict the number of bidders. We collaborated with the Procurement Monitoring Bureau and of course, with the REGIO traffic as well. And at the end, Procurement Monitoring Bureau canceled this procurement, and REGIO traffic redrafted the documents according to really, so that they can really are more fair and more economically advantageous for other competitors to participate. Second procurement, very similar, related to delivery of 12 low-floor trams. Again, my colleagues identified a number of technical evaluation and scoring criteria in the bidding documents, which really, again, restricted the competition. However, Riga Traffic made only like some minor modifications to the bidding documents. And this was cancelled, this procurement was cancelled later in this January 2019. A third procurement, again, was cancelled only in January 2019. Riga Traffic made like some minor changes in the procurement documents. Why this January 2019 was important for us in our monitoring process? It started at the end of the previous year, where actually different process media reports revealed how restrictive technical criteria, again, the same as what we identified in our experience, were probably a key factor in the corrupt procurement in transport vehicles between 2013 and 16. So, and meanwhile, this Corruption Prevention Bureau started a case against, how you call it, against Riga Traffic. So it like came all together, also all our experience. And actually, so at the beginning of 2019, the procurement process was cancelled. And in May, this Central Finance and Contracting Agency terminated the contract for all the process for EU funds to Riga Traffic, which led, of course, to the cancellation of the procurement project as such. And what one more, let's say, interesting fact that we issued our report on this case in February 2019, and Riga Traffic Riga Traffic accused us for publishing wrong information and wrongdoing. Of course, we requested the recall of this false information, which of course affected also our reputation, and they partly did that. Long story short, our case and experience showed that starting from the first procurement, and repeating like 2 more times, and also these investigations about previous years in Riga Traffic, that it was common practice, I can assume, and that of course it's very important to have monitors involved in such procurement processes so that they can identify these not integrity practices. But what else is very important? Of course, it's very important that we also have experts on board. I know from my colleagues that it was really a struggle to find an expert who can understand that, yes, this specific requirement in this particular procurement is restricting the competition. And this is very, very important that we can find such an expert, one in the Europe, for example, and have resources to have consultations with him. So this is in short. If you, of course, have some questions, I can follow up.
Thank you very much, Inese. And I think at the same time that you were telling us about some of the resources, the capacities that you had in place to conduct this monitoring, at the same time, this was also a test for your independence. And I think critical to that was also how you communicated this and how you stay independent as a third party in this whole process, collaborating with the different authorities, communicating to the public what was going on, making sure that you were seen as impartial in this process. And I think that's also a critical element of conducting monitoring. I mean, I take, of course, many more of your lessons, like bringing the right experts, and others. But now let me ask both Giovanni and Karina. We have seen that in your projects you have helped improve tender documentation, that you have also supported in other stages of the public contracting project. So can you tell us, like, for you have been like critical moments in the whole contracting cycle? I mean, that's actually a question that we had in the chat, like if you're involved since the planning, the needs assessment to the implementation. Karina, you already mentioned that being from the needs assessment is critical. But can you tell us what are some practices or measures that made your monitoring effective and help improving the quality or the outcomes of the contracting projects you were involved with? So who want to go first? Karina?
Thank you. I think we had, we passed all the stages, all the public procurement stages for the 2 tenders. I think we didn't have critical moments, but I can share with you that I think we helped a lot in terms of internal procedures. One thing that I can give you as an example is that we work together with the CA for developing the first tender documents. So they develop the tender documents, they send it to us, we provide the recommendations, and for the second tender, they use the best practices from the first tender to use it for the second tender documents. So I think this was a good initiative. I think, for example, we gave them recommendations regarding the need for contract amendments, for expanding the deadline, or including new features, even if not increasing the cost, and I think this was also key. We also gave them indications regarding price formulation, the need to conduct, research and proper market studies, not to base the input in preconditions. They just think about it. They need to have objective data. We also used the shared online folder using security standard. I think this was good for them because they trusted that all the information they were sharing with us, it was secured, and I think this was really important. Having communications aligned between the 2 organizations. We have a proper communication plan in place that matched the needs of the CA, but also our needs and the needs of the project. Leadership workshops with the CA. I think this was also very important. But in the end, and I think this is something I can share with you, is that these type of recommendations couldn't be provided if we just count on data. And I think there's an ongoing discussion regarding, procurement data. Yes, of course, technology like blockchain, smart contracts, procurement data, they are very important, for oversight, for civic monitoring, but they don't do all the work needed, to be honest. That's why I think a tool such as the IP, it's key for certain projects. Of course, it cannot be implemented in all the projects, but it's key to better understand the flaws of the system. Where are the cracks? What can we do to improve, even internal procedures? Because sometimes it's it doesn't have to do with corruption. It's not that people that are working on CAs are corrupt, or they are interested in performing fraud or the mismanagement of public funds. No, they're just people that sometimes don't have all the resources they need to conduct the proper job. So when we are authorized to see from close all the procedures, everything they're doing, we can better assist and help, because it's our role as society organizations that are experts in this field, in anti-corruption. We should work with best practices, and the law doesn't do everything, as the data doesn't do everything. Of course, it's good to have open contracts by default. Is good, very good to have the open contracting data standard implemented. It's very good to have dashboards and red flags tools. But if you don't have the people looking at that data, it's impossible to gain results. Thank you.
No, thank you, Karina. And I really like this last point you're making, because it's you're stressing like the capacity, the ability the IP has to conjugate different elements, the information, the data, the human factor there. So I think that's very good. Giovanni, what about you? What are your thoughts on this matter?
Yes, we met hard period, not about corruption or incorrect cases, but about delays. Delays was a problem, and we had a period with a conflict by contract authority and the contractor. But we use our role of supervisor of guarantees of signatory of all actors in the Integrity Pacts to try to put all around a table with regional authority for to know, for to discover the problem and to invite to solve this step, this impasse. And about these issues of delays, for example, we, with our expert, wrote a book. Was a booklet that then became a great book with the interview on 8 actors, national actors, about the issue of delays, for to know if this experience was a single experience of some key issues are spread in all countries. And for example, was a chance for having some advice, for example, from the contractor that asked to participate to conference of services, that is the phase where national body create prescription for the contractor that then can create complexity, delays, and so on. So not met irregularities in this case, but a problem. And for us, delays in Italy are problem for to use funds, for example, now in the recovery plan. So we pay attention to these issues, and we discover some chance for to make advice or recommendation on or to create a table for better understand how to solve this problem, or to contribute to do something.
Thank
This
you very
was
much.
our experience.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think you have provided very interesting details. I'm pretty sure that there are more questions to answer. I mean, we have many more on the chat if you want to have a look at it. I would like to invite Stefan, like if he can join us back with us, because we see so many more questions there, and I don't know if he would like to point out something. But I mean, we see, for example, making IPs mandatory at the EU level. Well, I would be the happiest, but I don't know, Stefan, if you would like to address some of these questions, and we can also look. I invite Inese, Giovanni, Karina to look in the chats and see if there's something you would like to add for your final intervention based on the questions of the participants.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rafael and colleagues. It was a very interesting debate. As regards some of the questions, I would like to pick out some which are more or less directly linked to us. The financing of the IP. And I think there are 2 elements. One, how long it goes, and then maybe what are the financing possibilities. For the second part, I would like to invite my colleague Anchas Mileos to say a bit, because I think that's certainly an important issue for many of you and for potential monitors. But I say, in principle, I think we should try to establish an arrangement which has clear conditions. So I think first of all, the money, in our view, for a monitor should not come from the beneficiary. It should come from another funding stream, but Anchasti Medeiros will explain what the possibilities are in order not to make them dependent. And the monitor should be selected in an open process. I think there also the managing authority will have to establish what are the key let's say, competences they expect from the monitor to have. So I think there should be an open, transparent procedure with clear, let's say, requirements for the monitor. But then, of course, the actual contract also has to specify what happens, as the question was, when the IP ends prematurely. First of all, you cannot withdraw money or claim money back for something which monitoring services which have already been conducted, and then there has to be a certain period of notice when to formally end the Integrity Pact, and only then the payment to the monitor can stop. So I think one needs, as in all contractual relations, to ensure that basically there are clear ground rules and a certain security for both parties, how long to pay and how long to receive the payments, because a monitor will also prepare for that. They will invest something, they will train their staff, or even recruit somebody new. So I think there has to be clear.
I believe we lost Stefan, but well, in the meantime, I would ask Inese, Karina, Giovanni, after you have seen the questions from some other participants interested in Integrity Pact, to say in 1 minute your final takeaway about how do we move forward with Integrity Pacts. So, Karina, thank you. Please go ahead.
Just to take in one of the things that Stefan was saying, and I think it's really important to keep in our heads that an Integrity Pact is an Integrity Pact. There are, of course, other civic monitoring tools. There are other ways of engaging civil society in monitoring the use of public funds. But I think we have a very good format that can be, distributed for many projects in many countries all over the world. And I think it's important to keep it stabilized in the sense that the fundamental, the core features of the IP should keep as an IP. Because to be honest, I sense that sometimes it can be this idea that, without funding or proper funding or with proactivity, but not in the right way, CAs and MAs and even governments may be, willing to use things that might seem an IP, but that are not really an IP. So I think it's really important for us to read the documentation that is being shared by our colleagues, and at the national level, to interact with key stakeholders to share the learnings of the IP, and also to share how it works and its formats. So I think that's key, because it's not the same sometimes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Karina. Inese, would you like to tell us your final remark?
Yeah, final. Of course, usually I have at the end the question: what to do next? How to not to lose a good idea, or how to implement that. And we saw also this in the questions. And maybe my looking from our perspective, our situation. Also, with the example I started, the first one I shared, start small. Start with small. Also, both if we look at the NGOs who could become those monitors, and also this public institutions or municipal institutions who would join their forces, start from some small project, small activity, and then build up your capacity and understanding, because it's very important that both or even all three sides understand the process, the idea, and are on the same page, let's say. So that's my advice. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Inese. Now your turn, Giovanni, to wrap up this.
In 1 minute, I think that anti-corruption having a 3 dimension: law, of course, culture, initiative about spread of culture of integrity, and the tools for to bring effective behaviors on the land. And I think that Integrity Pacts can give help on these two dimension, cultural dimension, and tools for taking behaviors in real land of operation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. And we have Anne-Christine from the REGIO, the EU Commission, that joins to just answer a few questions and wrap up the session. We cannot hear you.
Yes. Hello, Rafael, and hello, everybody. Yes, since Stefan has some connection problems, I hope he will be able to join us very soon. I can at least take the questions related to the funding, how to finance an Integrity Pact. Because as you know, the Commission has funded a pilot, and we funded a pilot that has been going on for 6 years, as you heard. And the idea behind this pilot was to actually learn from it, and to also make use of the experiences and share these and develop some tools. And so this has been the main aim with the pilots. But now we believe this is the time for member states to take ownership and to take over the development of Integrity Pacts. And that is why the Commission has decided that it will no longer finance any Integrity Pacts, because the pilot phase is over, it's concluded. And secondly, also, we wouldn't be able to finance all the Integrity Pacts in Europe, because we hope there will be many, and we don't have the human resources to manage them all. And then the member states, they actually do have a couple of options available in the framework of their programs. And there are in principle two types of funding sources. On one hand, they can use technical assistance, which is money at the disposal of each managing authority, each member state, or they can use the project costs. And I'll try to explain a bit in more detail how this works. And if we look at the Integrity Pacts, we have in principle, we have two main actors, as you know, the contracting authority, which is also the beneficiary of a project. And then we have the monitor, a civil society organization. And these are, of course, the key actors. But in the beginning, before a project exists, the managing authority also has a role, or the national coordinating body, because they will then be involved in the so-called design phase, and where, for example, they call and they publish a call for expression of interest to monitors to establish sort of a repository or a pool of qualified civil society organizations, monitors. And this happens then before any project is selected. So the managing authority has a task in sort of the, we can call it the pre. This is then funded, of course, by the technical assistance at the disposal of the managing authority, and this is sort of part of the normal tasks of the managing authority. However, if we then continue, we have the three more phases of an Integrity Pact. As you know, we have the phase when the public procurement process is being prepared, and procurement process, and also the implementation of the project. So this happens after projects have been selected. And here, of course, the key actors are the contracting authorities and the monitors. And for these two actors, either beneficiaries and monitors. This is possible in theory. However, it is up to each member state, each managing authority to decide whether this is the best option, because as was mentioned, has been mentioned also previously, it might be also be more appropriate that the cost of the monitor is comes from your independence of the monitor. So the other option is to use the technical assistance funding as well. So in principle, for the cost of the contracting authority, all these costs should be borne by the project. That's self-evident. But for the monitor, there are these two options: either technical assistance or project costs. And if the funding is technical assistance, it can come from an individual program, possibly the program that launches the call. However, it could also possibly come from, if a member state has a national technical assistance program, the funding could possibly come from there as well. So to sum up also, this is the managing authority tasks in the beginning, in the pre-project phase, that's paid for technical assistance. The contracting authority, the cost should be borne by the project, and the monitor, there the option is TEA or project costs. And so this is important. And then I think there was also mention of capacity building of the monitor, and this is an important point. And this is also something which can be covered either from technical assistance or from the project costs. So this is also important not to forget about. So capacity building is also possible. So I think I will stop there. I hope I managed to clarify, but I'm happy to answer any questions, any follow-up questions.
Thank you very much, Anne-Christine. I think your answer has been very clear. I think for now, the European Commission, the REGIO, won't be funding more IPs directly, but it's great to know or to hear that there are other mechanisms such as the technical assistance or the project's budget itself, to build capacity building as well, that governments can access these funds in order to keep opening spaces for collaborating with civil society, and particularly with IPs. And I think this actually kind of like rounds up our conversation to where we started. How do we generate that political buy-in? And I think that's, of course, we have heard some very good examples on how do we continue doing this. I think that's why, of course, generating that demand from our communities, from our countries, our citizens, is still a step that is essential. And on that note, this is why we prepare a guidebook that we would like to share with you as well. In one of the questions you asked us also, what are like some of the learnings, what are some of the mistakes that you have learned? Well, we have actually put all of this information in a new guidebook on how to advocate, set up and implement Integrity Pacts in the European Union. And it's actually now available in our website, transparency.org/Integrity Pacts. You can access it there. And you can also contact us at integritypacts@transparency.org if you want to have more information, if you want to have more details. But we really invite you to have a look to this new guidebook that it's available. So I think we are just in time to wrap up and have a coffee break before our next session. Thank you very much all for your contributions. I have enjoyed this conversation very much. I hope other participants as well, that you're feeling inspired to go out and have more Integrity Pacts, have more spaces for civil society to improve public contracting and make sure that contracts deliver for our communities. So thank you very much all. We'll be back in 10 minutes. And in the meantime, we invite you to go and have a look at the guidebook if you want, or have a coffee for the next session.